I see people are coming in. I can't believe it. Can't
No,
believe
no
it.
one's more shocked
Jeff
than I am.
Summers. Is that everybody working on their cameras? You don't have to show your face. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to the virtual launch party of Jeff Summers' Five Funerals. Your copy looks better than this. This is the arc. This is what I get. Yeah, already horribly stained.
That's why we don't send you the good copies, Nick. That's why.
You, Jeff, and all of you, I hope, are getting a copy of Five Funerals, if not right now, maybe tomorrow. And if you were very intelligent and pre ordered, you might have gotten one of these, the yearbook with these wonderful and ridiculous caricatures and senior superlatives and the like. Well, this was an amazing book. And even more amazingly, there were a lot of questions. And we had a conversation the other day whether Jeff should read for 20 minutes. And we all said no. Nobody wants to hear that. But maybe for a minute at a time, here and there, Jeff will pop in and read one of the many, many footnotes in this extremely interesting, dare I say, avant garde novel that is Choose Your Own Adventure, Edward Gorey, very funny, kind of a mystery, kind of a God knows what. So, Jeff, do you have anything to say for yourself?
This is a book I never thought I would be able to publish. I had no illusions about how difficult a sell this book is to a publisher. So I count myself incredibly lucky to have hooked up with the Ruadán folks, and that they saw in this book the potential that was there. So I'm just extremely happy to be here, and I want to thank everybody for showing up for this. We've been sort of joking about how deadly Zooms can be sometimes, and one of the worst way Zoom gatherings can be is when no one comes, and it's just me and Nick glowering at each other, for an hour. So, and I say that as a man who once drove, an hour and a half to a bookstore and read to nobody because nobody came to my reading. So, believe me, I appreciate the fact that you're all here. So, thank you.
Happened to me too. I was 5 hours from New York to Washington, D.C.,
Oh
and it
God.
was a club that nobody came to. Few questions here. We'll do a few questions. Maybe Jeff will be inspired to read a little bit at some point. I have some extra questions too, just inspired by what I'm seeing in Jeff's house where I've never been. And what a genius question. What an amazing, whoever this is deserves a Nobel Prize. What was your inspiration to write this book?
um, well, Edward Gorey and the Gashlycrumb Tinies, I guess, is the expected answer, right? And I grew up in Jersey City. Nick knows this. I grew up in Jersey City. Nick is also a Jersey City alum. It's funny. Nick and I have known each other for more than 20 years. We've met exactly once. I think this is
That's how we
maybe.
like it.
Sorry.
And that's how we like it.
Yeah, that's how we like it. This is also like maybe the third time we've actually spoken to each other. Um, but I grew up in Jersey City in the 1970s and 1980s, which means I was basically a feral child. I was what you might call a free range kid, right? My parents firmly believed that there was a bright line between kids and adults, and the two worlds never mixed. When my parents had friends over for coffee and politics, my brother and I were sent up to our room and we were told not to leave on pain of death. And on Saturdays or any day in summer vacation, I'd get up early in the morning and I'd make myself some breakfast and I'd leave the house. I wouldn't come back for 12 hours. My parents had no idea where I was or what I was doing. And what I was doing was the stupidest, most dangerous stuff you could possibly think of. I look back on it and I was mildly abandoned and largely unsupervised, and I had access to poisons and substances and weapons and criminal elements in Jersey City. And I made it home alive every night, but purely by dumb luck. And I think when I encountered the Gashlycrumb Tinies, which I was aware of Gorey's work from a very young age because I used to watch this old TV show called Mystery on PBS. I think it's still on, actually. It was part of their Masterpiece Theater umbrella, but it wasn't much of a Masterpiece Theater kind of vibe. It was really just a bunch of imported British detective shows and Agatha Christie adaptations. But Gorey's work had been animated to make the opening credits, and it's this really amazing credit sequence. So as like a 9-year-old kid, I was mesmerized by this credit sequence. And so when I stumbled on Gorey again in high school and then later in college, I was like, I recognized it immediately just because his style is so unique and so obvious. And when I found the Gashlycrumb Tinies, it was like I had found my people, because these Dickensian urchins that he depicts dying in these horribly hilarious ways, they were also largely unsupervised and mildly abandoned, and they also had access to substances and poisons and weapons and criminal elements. And so I think I saw in there, it's like, that's my latchkey childhood right there, and it stuck with me. So that's the ultimate inspiration for this book.
Sweet. The next question is, you answered already. When did you first discover Gorey's work? So I'll ask a variation on this question. Were you, as was I, disappointed in the actual show mystery after the incredible credit sequence and the Vincent Price bumper?
Yes.
Or did you like the show?
100%. I don't think I can't tell you one single episode or series that I actually watched in there. I only remember the credit sequence, but I remember the credit sequence so well that I can recreate it in my head at any moment. I know it like frame by frame, because I'm guessing I probably watched 50, separate episodes over the course of my childhood, and I just sort of memorized. It got burned into my brain. And that's probably why, when I was in college, I actually bought a framed poster of the Gashlycrumb Tinies, and I've hung it over my desk. So for like 40 years now, I have been staring at this poster. I carry it with me everywhere. I put it up on the wall wherever I live. And I've been staring at this poster. And so it only took like 35 years of me staring at this poster to suddenly say, hey, maybe I should try and turn this into a novel.
All right. Excellent. So here's a question from someone's attorney. Did you base any characters on real people?
It's okay. I have my attorney with me here today, and he's been advising me through this entire thing. This was actually a gift from my editor, Anna Kuhn, the brilliant Anna Kuhn, who really pushed me really hard on this book, and I'm glad she did, because her impact on this book was amazing. And we had a little joke based on one of the chapters that she basically forced me to rewrite. And so she sent me this as a celebration gift for the release of the book, and I've decided he's my lawyer. And Eddie here, the lawyer, says it's okay for me to answer this question, Nick. So it's all right. Yes, and I think it's impossible as a writer, for me at least, it's impossible not to have characters that are in some sense based on people you actually know. But I've never written a character, and not in this book either. There's no character that is literally a person that I know. It's mostly stuff that I've stolen from real people. I'm stealing from real people all the time. I'm stealing from Nick right now, like things he's doing or whatever. I'm recording it, and he's doing the same thing to me, I'm sure. So there are definitely people in this book that are absolutely 100% based on people I've known, especially people I went to high school with. There are a couple of mannerisms and physical traits that I've stolen from people just because they stood out in my head and they made sense to me when I was writing the story. I was like, oh yeah, I remember a kid did this when I was 17 years old, and it fits this character perfectly, so I'm going to steal it and make that person. So yes and no, I guess, is sort of the answer to that.
The answer is no. Don't trust Eddie. One of your cats. Let's see. How did Five Funerals start and evolve in your notebook? So I'm presuming it's someone who lives with you before it became a whole book project.
So the notebooks, for anyone who doesn't know, although I can't really shut up about it, so I don't know who wouldn't know about this. For most of my adult life, especially since I started writing, I've been writing short stories in notebooks, longhand, and like this is the most current notebook, so this is what it looks like. I write a story every month.
Show us the cover. Where'd you get this notebook? Is it a fancy notebook? Oh, it is
not. It is not. No,
this is like a Rite Aid special. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a throw. I don't go in for fancy notebooks. My wife loves a fancy notebook, and she collects fancy notebooks. And fancy notebooks intimidate me, and I can't actually write in them because I feel like I'm desecrating this beautiful object. So I buy the cheapest, school supply notebooks I can find. And I write a short story every month as an exercise. And it's partly to get down ideas. I view it as sort of like a mega notebook instead of just jotting down weird, bizarre phrases that I'll never understand 10 years from now. I try to quickly develop them into a rough sort of story. And part of the exercise is to practice ending stories, which I think is something that a lot of writers, they don't practice enough, and that's why you have so many people who never finish anything, because they just don't practice how to end a story. But what also happens is I use it as a development technique. And that's what happened with this book. The Five Funerals didn't start in the notebooks, but it finished in the notebooks, because when I originally had the idea for it, I was looking up at this poster and I was thinking, okay, this could be something. No one's ever done this before. I wonder about these kids. Like, what's their backstory? Why are they all dying? Why do they know each other? How are they connected? And I thought, okay, that's a fun idea. And I immediately knew I wanted to have them all come from sort of a private school, like, because I would explain the small class size and give them the connection so they would know each other without actually maybe not even liking each other, because they wouldn't be related, they wouldn't necessarily have bonds of affection, they would just be thrown together. So that all worked. But as I started to work on it, I had logistical problems, because it's 26 deaths and they have to all mean something, they have to matter. So initially I tried to structure it sort of as a detective novel, and I had one of the characters, Victor, acting as a detective. Like, he's investigating. He figures out that all of these kids that he went to school with have died in these weird ways, and he wants to find out why. And that quickly got kind of tedious and procedural, and I didn't want that. So then I started to work on another version that sort of treated each death equally and sort of going through chronologically. Each one died, and then that kind of didn't land, because I was introducing characters just to kill them, and then that didn't feel like it was working. So I sort of backed away from the long form novel, and I started just playing around writing stories about the deaths. And I gave myself permission to not worry about the narrative and not worry about connections or consistency or anything like that. And I just wrote stories just to have fun exploring, like, oh, a kid gets assaulted by bears and dies. How did that happen? What's the backstory there? And I just played around with it. And that broke everything open for me, because I realized that the stories didn't have to be connected. They didn't have to connect back strongly to the main narrative, because I wasn't really writing a book about 26 people who died. I was writing a book about loss and memory and, the people you leave behind in life, sometimes without even realizing it, and trauma and guilt. Those are the things I was really writing about. So it didn't have to be this really, really tightly coherent plot line. I could just sort of dive in and dive out. And once I realized that, everything came together for me. And a lot of the stories that I wrote in these notebooks ended up being the footnotes in this book. Some of them are virtually unchanged from when I wrote them. Some of them, as Anna will tell you, are extremely changed from when I first wrote them. But a couple of them are exactly, pretty much word for word, what my original was. And there's a cat attempting to climb me right now, which is why I'm a little bit distracted. There he is. So that's how the notebooks factor in here.
You may as well let him in the camera. Everybody wants to see that more than else.
This is Harry.
There you go, everybody. So this is a good time for you to read something to us. Maybe one of the footnotes.
Okay.
One of the extremely short footnotes.
I'll read you a random footnote, which is from Clara's chapter. And Clara is a bit of a performance artist. She's a bit of a pretentious character. And this is a chapter where two guys have gotten together to talk, just to catch up. And they start talking about Clara is one of their former girlfriends, and she has died, and they're sort of digging into it. And this is a footnote about where one of them tried to talk to Clara about a relationship with his friend that he didn't quite approve of. He chose a place where he and Flick usually met up, a steak joint with good cocktails. He remembered Clara walking in wearing enormous sunglasses. He thought they had to have been custom made. The lenses were the size of coasters. She looked like the alien from some low-budget 80s sci-fi movie they ran on the less reputable cable channels after midnight. She was wearing a heavy coat that draped her like a tent. It created the illusion that she was gliding along the floor like the nun in the Blues Brothers. People watched her. Phones came out. When she got to the table, she stared down at the chair like she'd never seen one before, or like she hadn't taken the logistics of her coat into account. After a moment's blank-faced consideration, she lifted one edge of the coat and enveloped the chair, then lowered herself down, leaning forward and laying one arm over the other. When their waiter arrived, Clarkson ordered a double bourbon for strength. He and the server stared at Clara for several long moments. She finally turned her head slightly toward the waiter, the only visible sign that she was looking at him. I want the driest Stoli martini you can make. Glance at the vermouth. Glance at it. Make it dirty, muddy, disgusting. Shake it, jump up and down, get your back into it. For a long time. Longer than you think necessary. 4 olives. Save the shaker ice. The waiter and Clarkson exchanged a glance, a whole conversation, wishing each other luck with the rest of their Clara experience.
All right, I promise you, everyone at their home is clapping right now. All the microphones are off. Next question comes from someone who might have read the first page of the book about the dedication, which has a special word in it. I-G-S. Yogis? Yogis?
Iogis.
What is
that's a brilliant. That's a inside joke between my wife and I. Back when we first were together, we used to have these silly, fun arguments about, oh, I love you more, oh, I love you more, that sort of thing. We was never particularly serious. We were always sort of kidding around. And to win, we used to just become more and more ridiculous. And eventually, to win the argument, I created my own word and just defined it as the largest possible value you could ever have in the universe. And it's an Iogi. And therefore, I always win the argument, because if I say I love you, Iogi, then my wife can't win. Although she did eventually come up with infinite Iogis, which trumped my Iogis. And so now the arms race, the affection arms race, continues.
So now it's in the book, so you win.
That's true. That's very true. Although at the same time, I'm not allowed to not dedicate books to my wife. So it doesn't really count. I don't get credit for it.
Very good. Let's see. How about if you could attend one fictional funeral from literature, whose would it be?
I actually had to think. I knew that question was coming, and I've had to think about it a little bit. I have two answers to that. One is highbrow and one is lowbrow. The highbrow one would be Patty's funeral from Ulysses. And the reason I would pick Patty's funeral from Ulysses is because I've read that book twice, and I still don't think I quite understand all of Ulysses. I'm not sure anybody really does. And I'm fascinated by the fact that people spend a lot of time and energy analyzing the Hades chapter in Ulysses, because they want to figure out the seating order in the carriage that everyone's in when they're riding to Patty's funeral. And there are entire research papers on this subject, and there's diagrams, and people take hints from the text saying, oh, well, if Stephen's looking out this way and seeing something, then he has to be on this side of the carriage. And that means that, Daedalus has to be on this, et cetera, et cetera. So I would sort of want to be there, just sort of A, just solve that problem, and B, because it might give me some insight into the book that I'm still uncertain about in my life. And the lowbrow version would be the Painless Pole's Last Supper from MASH, the novel by Richard Hooker, which is the book that the TV show and the film were based on. And the Painless Pole is a dentist at the MASH unit in Korea, and he's an incredibly depressed person, and he keeps having these suicidal ideations. And so to cure him, the doctors in the swamp, Hawkeye and them, they give him a Last Supper where they basically say, we're going to let you commit suicide, and we're going to have all your friends, we'll have a big party and send you off. And they give him a heavy sedative. And so he gets the experience of sort of killing himself and going off. And then he pops back up, and he's recovered, because he's broken through as a result of that. It's a little bit funnier than I'm making it sound. But I would sort of be fascinated by that, because that book was based largely on the author's real experiences in the Korean War. And I would really like to sort of see what that was actually like.
Those are both fairly highbrow, actually.
I don't know. Is MASH? Do we consider MASH highbrow?
Given current television, yes. So now let's go for a lowbrow question. What was an influential book for you? And also throw in, what was an influential zine for you?
So influential books. I mean, specifically for Five Funerals, influential books. Infinite Jest, 100%, because Infinite Jest, just the abuse of footnotes in Infinite Jest kind of inspired me a little bit. When I started to drop in short stories in here as footnotes, I thought back to Infinite Jest, and I thought about how Wallace used them, and would put entire chapters basically into footnotes and not care, and just be expect readers to sort of keep up with that. When I sent this manuscript to my old agent, Janet, who has sadly passed away, this was one of the last communications we had with each other before she died, actually, was about this book. And her initial response is she came back a day or two later, and she said, wait a second, is there a 12-page footnote on page 4 of this book? And she was like, no, I cannot deal with a 12-page footnote on page 4 of this book. And she said, I'm going to need some time to think on this. And then, of course, we never had that time to come back to it. So Infinite Jest, definitely. Also House of Leaves for the same reason. Just the format of House of Leaves, just the way Danny Mazuski is sort of like, I'll do whatever I want. I'll drop 16 pages of footnotes at you. I will have footnotes that crawl all over the book and force you to flip back and forth. I'll do anything I feel like doing. And that sort of gave me this permission to do stuff like that. Influential zine. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I published a zine for about 20 years called The Inner Swine, that in the zine world had a little bit of heft, had a little bit of recognition. I think one of my favorite zines that I still remember to this day is Infiltration. I don't know if you remember that one. By Ninjalicious was the name that he published under. And it was all about urban exploration. He and his friends would break into, abandoned places or remote places that hadn't been used in a long time, like think mansions in the woods or big warehouses in cities that hadn't been touched in years and stuff like that. And they would break in and they would explore and document. See my wife crawling around on the floor back there. I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure we want to know. But the thing is, like a lot of zines, my own zine was really self-indulgent. It was all about me and whatever I was thinking at the moment. And a lot of zines were that way, or they were about very specific scenes. And what I loved about Infiltration is it was something that I always wished I would be able to do, and I never really had the balls to do. Like I was not a person who was ever going to, cut a chain link and explore someplace. So it was one of those zines that I always looked forward to getting, and it definitely always inspired me because I feel like here was a guy who was doing something that he loved and then writing about it. And that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned.
Excellent. So you're Generation X. That's the answer.
100%.
House of Leaves, Infinite Jest, and Ninjalicious's Infiltration. Those
Have I dated myself? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. We don't. This might be a great time for, speaking of the footnotes again, one more footnote.
Okay.
Go for it.
I'm actually not going to read a footnote this time. I'm going to read just a character introduction.
Fantastic.
But it will be brief, I promise. Now, because the whole point of this book is, it's based on the Gashlycrumb Tinies, and the first person to die in the Gashlycrumb Tinies is Amy, who falls down the stairs. And so the entire book is centered on Amy's death at this high school party. And so I had to make sure that Amy was a memorable and very well-defined character. And so this is where the first part of the book where I really just lean into describing Amy. Amy Keaton had been born furious. By the age of 17, 8 months, and 16 days, this had become her defining trait. Decades later, underclassmen who had never really known Amy at all remembered her, mainly as an incandescent ball of fury. Amy didn't walk, she rampaged. Amy didn't talk, she fumed. Amy didn't make out with her boyfriend, she assaulted him. Amy juggled 6 or 7 revenge plots at any given moment and was so flushed with rage, it was said that her freckles were the last thing many people saw before their death. Amy was not popular, but she was feared, and this was almost as good. When she ran for student council president, she received 12 votes, mainly because many in her small senior class wished to avoid the consequences if she lost. The joke was on them, of course, as 12 votes got Amy the consolation prize of being vice president. She stood on stage listening to the results, and many kids swore for years afterwards that the lights dimmed and Amy began to glow with an unholy, terrifying radiation. As her last year at Bishop Colbus Prep crawled towards graduation and a long, hot summer full of endless arguments with her mother, frequent physical altercations with her insufferable little brother, and mute tolerance from her father back at the Keaton compound, Amy became furiously obsessed with one goal: hosting the outing party. Bishop Colbus Prep had been founded 163 years before as an all-boys school. Actually, I meant to stop at hosting the outing party. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop before I ramble on for 3 more pages and Nick becomes increasingly disapproving.
Also, we want people to buy the book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. I don't want to give everything away.
It's really you want to buy this book. Here's a great question. This might burn out the next half an hour. What is your favorite thing about being a writer?
Ah, the fact that I'm not wearing pants right now is probably one of the great things because I haven't worn pants in years. Um, I think the greatest thing about being a writer, number one, and this is nothing special really. It's the only thing I'm good at, right? So it's the only skill I possess, and so I'm one of those lucky people that I have one skill in life, and I'm able to actually do it. I'm actually able to make a living doing it, and this is what I spend my life doing. And I think not many people get that. A lot of people, the skill they have, they can't, do anything with, or they're prevented from it. Um, so that's one thing that's great is that, I'm doing what I love, and I do it every day, and it's my favorite activity. And the fact that I get to do it on a professional level is unbelievable. Um, the second thing that I really love about being a writer, though, which is weird because I am sort of an introvert. I'm a bit of a shy person, but I love interacting with people who've read my work. Even if they don't care for it, even if they have a critical take on it, or of course, especially if they love it and they think I'm brilliant. But I loved talking about writing in general with other writers, with people. I love talking about my writing with people who've read my writing, and digging into it. The connection that you get with somebody like that on an intellectual level is unparalleled, and that's one of the greatest feelings in the world, is when you meet somebody at like a reading or something, and they come up to you and they say, I loved this, here's why I loved it, can you tell me a little bit about how you got there? And then you tell them a story about how you wrote the book and they appreciate it. That's easily my favorite part of this whole
Well, that's my least favorite.
gig.
Wowee. Here's a great question. Sort of the opposite question. What are your thoughts on AI?
Oh,
Since it revolves writing.
Um, I have two sort of perspectives on AI because I write fiction, but I'm also a freelance writer. And so, from my freelance point of view, what I've seen with AI is that it's definitely cannibalized the low end of the business because AI is absolutely capable of writing perfectly glurgalistic, you know, content. It'll be grammatically correct. It'll make a certain amount of sense, and so the low end jobs that people used to stag, where you could make beer money in a weekend just writing up a web copy for somebody, those are gone. AI is taking it, and that I think is never going back. But it hasn't really, as far as my experience right now has been, it hasn't really affected some of the higher end freelance stuff, and I'm not sure it ever will. And the same thing for fiction. Like, it's amazing. Like the AI experience that I've seen is it's weird. It's like the first time you see it, it's like it's an amazing magic trick. You can go to your prompt and say, write a chapter. Write a chapter about reverse vampires, fighting aliens, on the planet Pluto or something, and do it in the style of this guy, and it will spit out 3,000 words, and those words will resemble a story, and actually seem really, really coherent, and you'll be amazed. You're like, oh my god, we're all cooked. That it's going to just be pumping out novels by next week. But the longer you spend with that prose, the longer you stare at it, the more you read it, the more you realize that it's actually not really very good. And this has been my experience with all AI writing, is that it's sort of like, it's amazing at first, and then the more I think about it, the less amazing it gets. um, and I don't think it's ever going to be. Let me be clear. It's going to be a factor. We already have examples of people who are churning out 30, 40 AI written books in a month and just dumping them on Amazon. And there are people in this world that they consume books the same way people consume TV shows, or just listen to the radio. Like, they just consume book after book after book. They don't think about the books all that hard. They're not really there to critically engage with literature. They're there just to be constantly entertained. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's a section of that audience that will happily ingest, 10 or 20 AI written novels every month and be perfectly happy about that, have no complaints, and that's fine. There will be a market for that. But that's not my market. Like, those people aren't buying my books anyway. And so I don't really think I'm terribly worried about it, because the books that I write, or the stories that I write, they're looking for readers that are looking for that human connection. They're looking for readers who are looking for something interesting and innovative, not something that's based on borrowing 6,000 other writers' little bits and pieces and putting together what is essentially a very sophisticated pastiche. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem. The real problem, I think, for everybody is going to be when it's already becoming increasingly difficult sometimes to determine at a glance that something's AI. And it doesn't do you any good if you buy a novel and you realize on page 353, wait a second, I think this book was written by an AI bot. You need to be able to recognize it immediately so you know what you're getting into. If you choose to buy it because you're interested in it and you don't care that it was written by AI, great. But if you want to avoid AI, which I think a lot of people probably do and will in going on into the future, it needs to be clearly labeled and it needs to be obvious, or else it's just going to completely muddy the waters. And that's where I think the real problem is going to come into.
All right. You minute for me, thanks, says the chat. And the follow-up was, do we think we need a real life Avery Cates? You may not know who Avery Cates.
Now we realize that Avery Cates, he's an assassin character from a cyberpunk sci-fi series. You realize his solution for everything is
your series. That's the important part of the sentence.
Oh yeah, but Avery Cates, his solution to everything is to shoot it in the head. So yeah, I mean, I would hesitate to break that glass. To be honest with you, I mean, is he going to be a better solution? Because he would, he'll go and he'll assassinate all the AIs of the world. But I'm not sure if you read the books. The world didn't exactly go on an upswing after Avery Cates's successful mission against, the monks. So I don't know. I would hesitate. I would think twice before I called him in on this.
All right. Fair enough. I remember just a little while ago, somebody was posting every few months they sort of upgrade the AIs. But it still can't pass a certain test. The test is write a locker room mystery short story that makes sense. Favorite one was there was a locker room mystery. Somebody was killed in the bathroom, and 3 months later they find the criminal who's still standing there. Up. So forget literature and highfalutin stuff. Even just the basics of wait a minute, how does this story work? Last question. This is like a secret word question. This is somebody, I guess it could be potentially what they call spoilers. So who is the lamp? I don't know that.
What's great about this question is that it's obviously someone who's actually read the book already, which is kind of amazing. So whoever sent that question in, thank you. Thank you for reading the book and thank you for paying attention. The lamp is, and actually maybe this is a good time to have a quick little reading because I can read the section that this whole thing pertains to. So let me do that. Let's see if I can find it. Of course, I have these marked, but it's not doing me any good right now. Okay, here we go. So the lamp joke comes from this part of the cat is attempting to knock my computer over right now. The lamp comes from this part of the book where the surviving kids, they're not kids anymore, they're adults, the survivors that are realized that about 21 of their fellow alumni from this high school have died in these bizarre and strange ways, have started to gather together at each of the funerals as each one of them dies one by one. And they start to try and figure out what's going on. And this one girl, Kate, is absolutely convinced that they're being hunted down by some kind of a serial killer for something that they did or something that happened. And she's equally convinced that that somebody was secretly at this big party where this big, terrible thing happened to them all. And they didn't realize it. And she's been trying to convince these two other kids, these two twins, Titus and Winnie, that she's correct. And she's showing them a video and pictures and stuff that she's gathered. The shot had been taken out on the patio. He remembered Kate taking charge, browbeating them to assemble, crouching on the other side of the pool to take the photo. The pool, filled with bottles, was lit from below, an eerie blue glow that refracted into multicolored sparkles that danced on the walls of the house. Everyone was gathered together in a pose, smiling, hands up, red-faced and sweaty, except Amy, who stood off to the side, smeared mascara making her resemble a raccoon, arms crossed. Near the center, Yorick had lifted Fanny Heck up by the waist, and Titus thought her contorted body and expression could either be delight or horror. He followed Kate's pointing finger. On the second floor behind them, in a window lit by a soft orange glow, there was an outline of something. Shit, Winnie said flatly. That's not ominous at all. If this turns out to be a ghost, I'm going to be so irritated. That's a person, Kate said. That's number 27. Or, Titus said slowly, a lamp. It's not a lamp, Kate said emphatically. Someone was at that party hiding from us, and I think whoever it was has been killing us off one by one, and they're almost finished. The lamp is almost finished? Winnie nodded, sipping wine. I believe you. Without warning, Kate turned and leaned her body over, reaching out to grab one of Winnie's hands. Thank you, Winifred, she said. Winnie shot Titus a look of naked alarm. Come on, Kate said, releasing Winnie and turning back to the screen. She tapped her finger and pictures began flashing past. Think about it. Think about all the damage. The house was so fucked up, and Amy was so fucking mad at us, but I don't remember doing most of that stuff. Do you? Did we do all that? Could we have done all that? I don't know. It was chaos, right? Someone could have been doing that stuff in the background, and we all thought one of us was doing it. And remember how the dust around Amy was all messed up? Was someone down there, down in the basement while we were upstairs? Absolutely, Winnie said, nodding gravely. None of us would have been down there. Exactly, Kate said. We were asshole kids, sure, but if you or me or even your brother went down there, we would have raised the alarm, called for help, not walked around her dead body and gone back upstairs. She tapped the trackpad. Now, here, I've reconstructed. Kate, Titus said, draining his cup and reaching for the wine box. Kate. Kate turned around. Titus? Kate, let's say you're right, and a lamp has been hunting us down. The lamp has spent 2 decades keeping tabs on 25 people, plotting murders. Murders that were so carefully constructed that not one has pinged law enforcement or triggered an investigation. Murders that read as bizarre accidents instead of, well, murders. This lamp is brilliant. This is Dr. Moriarty in lamp form. This lamp is a Bond villain. Kate's face was tight and unamused. Titus? He held up his hand. Kate, people try to plot one murder and they mess it up. Serial killers, okay, but everyone knows there was a murder, even if they don't know who did it. Kate, Katie, cats, there is no lamp. So,
who is the lamp?
We don't know, is what it comes down to. This book, I went through a lot of permutations when I was conceptualizing this book, and there was a version way back when where there was a killer, where there was somebody hunting these kids down. And then that started to fade away. And then once I started working on this book with Anna in editing, we realized that that was the weakest aspect. That was the weakest take on the whole thing, was this idea that there was somebody actually hunting these kids down. Because it really, as I said before, this is a book about trauma and memory and loss. This is a book about realizing that you've left people behind that you once pledged yourself to. Like, I'll walk through the fire for this person, and then 20 years later you realize you've lost track of them and you don't know what they're up to. And then you get that gut punch of finding out, oh yeah, they died 5 years ago and you didn't even know it. That's what this book was really about. So we kind of took all that stuff out of there, and the lamp is just a vestige of that. The lamp is just a paranoid remnant that Kate is obsessing over. You can choose to believe that the lamp is somebody, but the lamp is nobody. There is no lamp, as Titus says.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That was an hour or so. And what can I say except if you haven't bought 5 Funerals,
Do it.
Green, it is.
Do it.
Maybe you're seeing this 5 years from now. It'll be in print, I promise you. Maybe things have gone so far south that there's no more television, there's only YouTube and books.
Maybe this will be the foundation of a new cargo cult religion, and people will be sitting around fires reading from this book. It's possible.
You want to get in early. You want to be the Pope. So buy this book, 5 Funerals. Thank you.
And most importantly, if you took away nothing else, take away that I have 5 cats to feed, and I need every red dime I can get my hands on to feed these cats. So please buy multiple copies. I need you to. I'll beg.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Nick, so much. Thanks, Deborah, for organizing this. Thanks, Ruadán, for putting this together. And thanks, everybody, for showing up for this. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
And Anna Kuhn.
And Anna, yeah, of course.